are sitting in the chair you sat in 5 years ago. Same apartment, same low hum of the refrigerator, same crack in the ceiling you kept telling yourself you'd fix when things got better. They didn't get better. And somewhere, deep in the part of your mind you've learned to silence, you already knew they wouldn't. Think back. You were 22. You were hungry. You had that fire in your chest that everyone called potential. People looked at you and said, "That one's going somewhere." So you did everything right. You got up early, you stayed up late, you watched the videos, you read the threads, you worked the job, you kept your head down, you did the thing they all told you to do. Work hard, be patient, it'll come. So you waited, and you worked, and you waited some more, and nothing came. Not nothing like a small setback. Nothing like a silence so loud it starts to sound like an answer. The question you can't stop hearing now, the one you keep trying to drown out with noise and plans and maybe next month's, is this. What if you were never behind? What if you were just playing the wrong game the entire time? Let's go back further. You wake up on a Tuesday. Not because you want to, because the alarm tells you to. There's a difference, and your body has always known it, even when your mind refused to admit it. You get dressed in the dark. You eat something forgettable. You commute. Maybe it's 40 minutes. Maybe it's an hour. You spend that time scrolling or staring out a window or listening to a podcast about success, because if you absorb enough of it, maybe it'll stick. You get to work. You are good at your job. Maybe even great. Your manager knows it. Your colleagues know it. You know it. And none of that knowing translates to anything in your account by the 28th of the month. There is something deeply wrong about being excellent at something that doesn't change your life. You come home. You are tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. It's not physical tired. It's the kind of tired that builds when you spend all day pouring yourself into something that doesn't pour back. You tell yourself you'll start the side project tonight. You don't. You tell yourself you'll save more this month. You won't. You tell yourself things are about to change. They don't change, not because you're lazy, not because you're stupid, but because you were handed a map to a destination that was never meant for you, and you have been following it so faithfully for so long that questioning it feels like betraying yourself. Here is the thing nobody said out loud. The lesson wasn't about working harder. The lesson was about understanding what money actually is, and they never taught you that part. They skipped it. Deliberately or carelessly, it doesn't matter which. The result is the same. You were taught that money is a reward, that it flows toward effort, that if you give enough of your time and energy to the machine pays you back fairly. That is a story, the useful story for people who need obedient workers, a catastrophic story for anyone who actually wants to build a life. Money is not a reward for effort. Money is a language. It moves toward people who understand how to speak it, not people who simply deserve it. Let that sit with you for a second, because your instinct right now is to reject it. You feel something tighten in your chest. Good, that tightening is the collision between what you believed and what is true. You were told the world was fair, that talent rises, that discipline wins, and maybe those things are partially true, but they are not the mechanism, they are not the engine, they are just the surface story. The actual mechanism is this. Money moves toward value creation, not value demonstration, toward ownership, not participation, toward leverage, not labor. You have been demonstrating your value your entire career. You have been showing up, proving yourself, waiting to be recognized. But the people who are no smarter than you, no more disciplined than you, no more deserving, they stopped proving and started owning. They own a product, they own a process, they own an audience. They own something that works when they stop working. You own your hours, and hours run out. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because right now a voice in your head is building a case.
It's smart, that voice. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like protection. It's saying, that's easy for some people. They had money to start with. They had connections. They had luck. They had time I don't have. I have real responsibilities, real pressure. It's not that simple for me. And here is the brutal thing. Some of that is true. The system is not equally weighted. Some people start closer to the finish line. Some people are running with weights on. But that voice isn't just acknowledging reality. It's doing something else. It's using reality as a ceiling. It is taking something true and turning it into permission to stay exactly where you are. That is not analysis. That is the ego protecting itself from the terror of trying and failing. Because if you try, really try, not the half-trying you've been doing where you keep a mental escape hatch open, if you fully commit to a different understanding of money and it still doesn't work, then what? Then the story gets harder to carry. So you don't try, not fully. You stay in motion just enough to feel like you're doing something. You stay comfortable just enough to not feel the real pain. And the years move. God, the years move.
There is a version of you that saw this coming. You've caught glimpses of that version in rare moments, maybe at 2 a.m. once, when everything was quiet and you let yourself think without editing. Maybe in a conversation with someone who had built something real, when you felt that mixture of inspiration and shame you couldn't quite name. You knew. Not the details, but the shape of it. You knew you were avoiding something. The lesson you ignored wasn't complicated, it wasn't secret, it was just uncomfortable enough that you kept rescheduling the confrontation with it. The lesson is this: your relationship with money is emotional before it is financial. Every decision you make with money, every time you don't invest, don't ask for more, don't build, don't charge what you're worth, don't own, don't demand, don't believe, those aren't logical decisions. They are emotional ones dressed in logical clothing. You are afraid of money. Not in a simple way, in the way that people are afraid of things that have been used against them, or withheld from them, or turned into a measure of their worth since before they could understand what was happening. Maybe you grew up watching it cause chaos, watching adults argue in low voices or loud ones, watching it disappear and reappear and disappear again, watching what happened to people who had it versus people who didn't, and you absorbed a story. Maybe that wanting too much is greedy, maybe that rich people are corrupt, maybe that you're not the type, maybe that it always runs out, maybe that talking about it is embarrassing, maybe that trying and failing would be worse than never trying at all. Those stories are running your financial life. Not your strategy, not your income, not the economy. Your story. This is the moment. Not a moment of motivation, not a speech, not a list of things to do differently starting Monday. This is the moment where you see it. The real poverty was never in your account. It was in the conversation you were never willing to have with yourself, the question you kept not asking, the belief you kept not challenging. You stayed broke not because the world is hard, though it is, not because you weren't talented, you are, not because the system is rigged, though parts of it are. You stayed broke because you inherited a psychological framework built for someone else's life and never once stopped to question whether it fit yours. And now you're sitting with that. Maybe you're 23 and this is a warning. Maybe you're 31 and this is a reckoning. Maybe you're closer to 40 and this feels less like insight and more like grief. Whatever age you are, the window is the same size. Right now. Here is what changes nothing, watching this video and feeling something and then returning to the same Tuesday. Here is what changes everything, the willingness to sit with the discomfort long enough to let it actually rewrite something. Not a habit, not a routine, a belief. The belief that you are allowed to build something, that ownership is available to you, that your relationship with money can be renegotiated, not by working harder inside the old framework, but by burning the framework down and building a new one from a question you've never let yourself ask honestly. What would your life look like if you stopped proving your value to systems that were never designed to give it back? You don't have to answer that out loud, but you have to stop pretending you don't hear the question. The chair is the same. The crack in the ceiling is the same. But you are not exactly the same person you were 12 minutes ago. Something shifted. Something small. Maybe just a degree or two of angle. But you have been alive long enough to know that a degree or two sustained over time takes you somewhere entirely different. The version of you that stays broke makes no dramatic mistakes, no obvious failures. He just keeps agreeing, keeps nodding, keeps waiting for permission from a system that profits from the waiting. The version of you that doesn't, that version starts with exactly this moment. Not with money, with the audacity to want it differently.